I feel like I got into a cycle of just going through the motions versus stepping back, reflecting, understanding who I really was so that I could give myself permission to be me so that I can in direct alignment.
Welcome to Climbing the Corporate Ladder Without Breaking a Heel. I'm your host, Dr. Cynthia. With over 30 years in the corporate world as a single mom, cancer survivor, and often the only woman in the C suite, I understand the balancing act high achieving women face. Now, an executive coach and international speaker, my mission is to embolden every woman in the C suite or on the rise to claim her agency and challenge the norms holding her back. Tailored for ambitious professional women, this show features candid conversations with powerful business leaders sharing their real stories of success and failure. If you're ready to look up and step up, you're in the right place. Join us and invest in your future today. Hello, everyone, and welcome back. I am your host and your coach, Dr. Cynthia. Today's episode is for every high achieving woman who's ever wondered whether the pattern she's living in, the one she can name in her sleep, is actually who she is or just who she has been on repeat. My guest today spent over 30 years climbing to the top of corporate America as the vice president and senior partner at IBM. And then she did something most people never do. She reached financial freedom nearly 12 years ahead of her own projected timeline. And she used that success as proof that she was allowed to choose something else. She's now a master certified life coach, motivational speaker, and the international best-selling author of 30 Days to Yes to Me, along with Yes to Me, Break the Cycle, and You're Working Too Hard. She's the creator of the Power of No framework, and she traces nearly all of it back to the woman who raised her, her grandmother, in Shreveport, Louisiana, who taught her about her own worth long before corporate America tried to unteach it. Please welcome Anouk Brumfield. Anouk, welcome to the show. So great to have you.
I am super excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh my gosh. And you join us today from Shreveport, Louisiana, your hometown.
Yes, I am really grateful that I'm at home today. I travel a lot. Sometimes I have no clue where I am, but today I am in Shreveport, Louisiana.
Yeah, it is always a good thing. I know sometimes when we travel, we wake up and we don't even know what city we're in because we're planes, trains, and automobiles. Well,
Yeah.
one of the things that struck me when you and I met, and as I was doing my research, is this idea that not only did you spend 30-ish years in corporate America and reach the pinnacle of your career, but you walked away nearly 12 years ahead of schedule. There's two things I find fascinating about that. One is that you had a schedule because I think so many women we've studied don't have a plan to even know that they're 12 years ahead of their financial freedom, their financial plan. Um, but you also had the courage, the permission you gave yourself to walk away and do something entirely different. Take us back to that moment in time and that sort of awakening or call that happened at that point.
Yeah, when you say 2 years in corporate, that is a long time, but really time really does fly by. And I was really grateful. I had a really, really awesome career in corporate America, and I am so grateful for that career. And I will tell you that I was raised by my grandmother who only had a very small education when it comes to classroom education.
Mhm.
And so I always tried to find people that I could role model. And so I had a friend, he came from a very prominent family. And so I just thought, hey, I'm just going to do what he does. That obviously they have the recipe for success. And so I went to college in New Orleans, Louisiana, Dillard University, and he majored in business management. So I'm like, okay, I'll major in business management. And so
Yes.
Then, the freshman year, he says, "We have to get an internship because we're smart. All of us are smart, but we need to differentiate ourselves. So we have to get some work experience." And so he decided to do an internship with Inroads. And I called my grandmother and said, "I need to stay here in New Orleans." I went to college in New Orleans for the summer to get some work experience. She says, "You're coming home. Where do they do that at?" So I had to come home that summer, and then I had to program her to make sure she knew that I was going to college so that I could have a better life, and I had to get whatever experiences. So the next summer, I got an internship with Amico. I actually
Mhm.
had to change my major to accounting in order to get that internship. And so I just kind of made my way in corporate, just kind of following other people's recipe. And
Yes.
so I started my internship in Tulsa, Oklahoma, my sophomore year. And then they gave me an internship my junior year. And then they gave me a full offer right after college. And so I started my career just trying to figure it all out. Like, I didn't even know what I wanted to major in. And I ended up getting this opportunity to interview for an internship, and I made it my way in corporate. And then I began to just find people around trying to figure out, they seem successful. Maybe I can go, duplicate what they're doing. And so I made it all the way to senior partner, vice president of IBM. But at some point in my life, I began to say, is this what I'm really supposed to be doing?
Mm,
Or have I just been mimicking? Have I just been performing all this time? And I was really successful, great at it. But I think in my 40s, I began to really get to know myself better and I wanted to align with myself. And so early on, I always had a game plan. And I then in my 40s began to say, okay, I need to make sure I have a game plan overall with life, overall with finances. And I just want to make sure that I am my best version of myself because
mhm,
time is the only currency. We have no idea how much time we have. And I realized that I really love to serve people. I really love to inspire. I love to encourage. I love to motivate. I love to empower. So I love that part of the job. I really love developing people, serving people. But I no longer felt fulfilled, and God
mhm.
was telling me it was time to do something totally different to make a bigger impact, which was really scary too because, hey,
Mhm.
placing, I really enjoyed it, but I wasn't probably fulfilled. And so I kinda walked away, feeling confident after I had talked to financial advisors, but still a little leery to say, "Okay, who am I going to try to mimic now?" And
Right?
God told me that it is so much better just to be me and
Mhm.
focus on what he was telling me that I needed to do and don't worry about what everybody else was doing, that I needed to create and define my own definition of success, my own definition of joy, my own definition of joy, and go out and just do it. And so that's kind of where it all kind of went through me and it went over a decade or so for me to truly get into that alignment and truly to take action.
Yeah. Gosh, there's so many lessons though as I'm listening to your story. And I want to definitely give pay honor and time to your grandmother as well. But this idea that your resourcefulness around, well, who else is doing this and appears successful? And there's this guy who comes from an affluent family, so they're obviously doing something right. So I'll look and see what he's doing. I mean, while I hear the other side of the story is also to not lose your own authenticity in that and to not lose your sense of self, there's something powerful about looking at role models, identifying people that have had some success and sort of figuring out your way and your path. I also find it interesting that it was a gentleman, the friend that you were initially. Did you find I guess what the curiosity in me says, did that help you to not think about boundaries or things that would be more difficult as a woman coming up in corporate America? Were you kind of following him and going, "Well, if he can do it, I can do it?" Um, I'm curious about how that landed because, it was more difficult then than it is today, and it's still tough for women in business.
Yes, I definitely think by having my first role model that was a guy was
Yeah,
really helpful because I in my experience, guys think differently, and that a
absolutely.
lot of times we as women can sometimes limit ourselves,
Yeah.
that we accept no as an answer for things that we really want and know that we deserve. And I do believe by me watching him, by me getting advice from him, that helped me to understand that I could do it too.
Yes.
But it also taught me that I couldn't do it alone, that I
Right.
needed help from sponsors, I needed help from mentors, I needed help from coaches. And so I am really grateful for that village that really aided me to have that successful career and also to support me when I began to pivot to say, I need to be my authentic self and that I
Mhm.
can be successful being my authentic self. Because early on, I didn't know that. I was just going through the motions. I was just being robotic, doing the things that I thought I had to do to be successful, and I
Right.
lost a piece of myself.
Yeah. I think I discovered that, um, later. I think I just for myself, I think I didn't discover that until I left corporate 3 years ago. Um, when I was starting my own business, my own practice, as you had, you got to you're ahead of me in that space was I had been so driven by sort of facts and data and showing up in the masculine and all the things. And what I learned, I'm still learning, is that vulnerability, that authenticity, that combination of, head and heart and all of those things, that's in this line of work. Um, it- I think makes not only me more interesting, but my work more impactful because it's not coming from this sort of what worked for me in corporate America inside these, rigid kind of walls.
Yeah, it's good to show people that you are human because then
Yeah,
people can resonate and connect with you more, right?
right.
That's kind of what I've found that we all like have a story.
Yeah.
And sometimes we're not open to share our story, especially when you're in corporate. I mean, you have like all of these deliverables, you have all of these objectives, and we lose our human side.
Mhm.
And that's one of the things that I changed before I left corporate because I felt like I had permission to be myself and that I could still be just as accomplished, and that people began to truly gravitate when I led with people first, when I led from the heart because people show up as their full self, and we need to empower them to be their full self. And actually, they will do more for you and work harder for you in those cases when you're showing them that you see them and that you understand them because you're human as well.
Right. Absolutely. Let's talk about grandma before we get too further deep into some of the frameworks and things like that. Um, I know she taught you a lot of important lessons. You give a lot of credit to the woman that you are, the woman that you've become. Talk a little bit about your grandmother's influence in your life and those important things she taught you that in some ways corporate America tried to unteach.
Yeah, so my grandmother was a very stern lady. And she taught me a lot about discipline. She taught me a lot about hard work. She taught me a lot about the value of building and nurturing relationships. She taught me a lot about keeping your word because sometimes you don't have anything else but your word. And she was one of the most resourceful ladies or people actually that I know. Like she didn't grow up with a lot, but she made so much out of what she had.
Yeah.
And she didn't get the opportunity to have a lot of classroom training, but she was so wise with the knowledge that she had and based upon those experiences. And she was always willing to kind of share that with, others. And she made such a big impact, not only on her family, but also on the community. So it taught me that it doesn't matter where you start, it doesn't matter what your limitations are, that you can go do whatever. So as a little girl, I began to dream really big. And I knew that I did not want to be like my current circumstances at the time. I used to ask so many questions because I was trying to figure it all out. I was so analytical, and I began to kind of game plan based upon the things that she was sharing with me. So, again, I feel like in my life, I really do nurture relationships. I really do nurture hard work. I do nurture keeping my word because of
Mm.
those things that my grandmother instilled in me.
Yeah. Where were the what conflicts did that pose for you early on in corporate life? Were there some of those things that came into conflict or felt, um, that they didn't line up with what the expectations were in the, busy world of corporate America?
Well, I would say that some of those elements, I stayed true to that throughout my corporate career. And I felt very comfortable to speak up when I felt like something was misaligned to
Yeah.
those things. Like if, we said we were going to do something for an employee and now we're changing our mind, I was at that table speaking up because to me it's about like integrity. I do believe that I was always encouraged to make sure we were networking and building those strong relationships. There was one guy that told me early on because I was working really, really hard. And I'll never forget this. His name is John Banfield. He says, the key to success in corporate is don't work hard, work smart.
Mm, yeah.
And I was trying to reconcile how do you do that? And I finally learned, I didn't understand it initially what he meant by that because, of course, you have to show up, you have to do what you're responsible for doing. But you can be so busy working hard that you don't get noticed because you're not building those relationships, you're not networking, you're not standing up and sharing what you are doing with other people so that you can, progress. So that was a tip that John Banfield gave actually to me when I was an intern, probably that second summer that I was an intern. And I didn't understand. And I think he was telling me that as an intern, I was so busy working really hard so that I can get that offer that I probably was not making the connections with people as much as I could have, should have at the time.
Yeah. Wow, that's sage advice. You were very blessed. I mean, you think about your grandmother, what a blessing, and the gentleman that served as a role model and just great people in your life. I think we all have those people in our life if we're open to it and looking for it um and sometimes reaching out and asking for it. You talk about breaking a cycle, and you kind of alluded to it a little bit ago. Was there a cycle that you saw in yourself that you had to awaken to that had to be broken? I'm thinking about the person listening that's saying, "What is the cycle that I'm in that I need to be identifying and stepping away from?"
Yeah, I feel like I got into a cycle of just going through the motions
Mm.
versus stepping back, reflecting, understanding who I really was so that I could give myself permission to be me so that I can
Mhm.
be in direct alignment. So that's kind of what I went through.
Mhm.
And I then began to understand, like, as things were happening, my grandmother passes away and, have like other family members passing away and all this tragedy in life, I began to say, gosh, life is passing by.
Mm.
Type of life do I want to live? What type of legacy do I want to live behind? Who do I want to be known for? And I need to make sure that I give myself permission to go co-create that life because I can't wait on anybody else. So I would just encourage someone is to make sure that you make sure you know who you are, you be who you are, you surround yourself, and you create your plan and you go do it and you go get it because this is your life and you're the CEO of your life. At the end of the day, you can't blame anybody but yourself. We all will have limitations, we'll have challenges, but there will be ways that you can kind of break through that. So we have to break through cycles that's in our mind telling us that we cannot do something, telling us that we cannot have something. We can have whatever we want. And God will definitely position us with the right people to aid us if we just take that first step.
Yeah, 100%. You said something really important. So, in my work, I talk a lot about drift and drift being sort of it happens in different ways, but that rinse and repeat, that going through the motions is the words you used. And I think that success sometimes hides drift, right? So, on the outside, we're successful. We have the title, we have the
Yes.
income, everything's going well. And sometimes for a lot of us, we don't realize we've been drifting until a tragedy happens or a difficulty happens. We sort of hit up against the rocks, if you will. Your grandmother's passing. Those are the kinds of things that have these awakenings that sort of jar you loose and say, you've been drifting on rinse and repeat. You're just, going through the motions. Um, my hope and goal is to awaken the person listening to say, don't wait until something happens. Don't wait until you're laid off or you go through an unexpected breakup or a death in the family or whatever, an illness of your own or someone else's to have the awakening of, wow, I've just been kind of drifting. How do you how do you help the person listening? Because I know you're a master certified life coach to recognize what I call drift or cycle in your language. How do you help them recognize that they're in this repetitive cycle before they're jarred into awakening?
Yeah, very good question. And it reminds me of my son's seventh grade school year. And that's when I was really progressing really fast up the corporate ladder. I became an executive. And at this time, I had gone through a divorce. So I was, raising my son solo. And now I'm an executive. So I'm moving up the corporate ladder. Yet I'm leaving my son behind because every Sunday I'm having to fly out to California, come back on Thursday. So my mom is now raising my son. And that's when I had this reflection to say, gosh, I don't know any of my son's teachers. I missed his entire seventh grade year, but I felt like I had to do what I had to do to provide.
Mm,
So what I would encourage people to do before they drift, because I felt so unfulfilled, even though on the outside, people might have been congratulating me, but I felt so empty on the inside. Even though I loved that compensation, I didn't feel fulfilled because I felt like I had missed something that was very important. And I can never go back to my son's seventh grade year. And so, what I would encourage anyone to do is to make sure that you spend some time, first of all, assessing who you are, what your values are, what you're passionate about, and to make sure you never allow anything to compromise your values.
mm,
And that know that you will have different seasons in life where you have to prioritize different things, that you need to make sure that you know what your priorities are in this season. Create your plan and go do it. So it's just as simple as that. I tell people that a lot of times we really know, like our gut tells us that I'm not really happy. I'm not really at my optimal, but a lot of times we just continue to do it for whatever reason. And like you said, we need to figure out how do we do it proactively versus having to be reactive. And so
mhm.
really making sure that you spend some time with yourself, creating your game plan and executing it and begin to think about am I really passionate about this? Is this really my purpose? Is this what really fulfills me? It's not just the title, it's not just the paycheck, but am I getting the fulfillment? Will I do this if I wasn't getting that paycheck? Will I do this if I didn't have the associated titles? And I do encourage people because, again, if I wasn't just following someone early on, and that's kind of how I landed in corporate, which again, I'm grateful for, but I
Sure.
think I had really known who I was and what I was really interested in, and I took the time to do that assessment, I might have landed somewhere differently, right? And I might not have had to, pivot and realize that even though I was going through and I seemed happy, I really wasn't at the time.
Mhm.
So spend some time with yourself and give yourself permission because you can't worry about what everybody else is thinking. So I would say define your own operational definition of success.
Oh, I love that.
Doesn't have to be your definition. And it really comes back in then being your authentic self in all spaces that you're in.
Mhm. You mentioned several things that really spoke to me. It's interesting in chapter 2 of Now Near Next, we get into purpose because to your point, what are my values? What are my non-negotiables? And in seasons of life, they might change slightly. Usually at our core, they're pretty stable as I think we'd agree, but those can change slightly over time. But that gets really grounded. If you strip away the title and the income, who am I? And what
Yes.
really is my mission here and what I'm here to do and to serve. And I love this notion of your own operational definition of success. The other thing you said that I think is important to highlight is, and I talk about this a lot too, our body tells on us first. So I have the 7-minute pivot, which is a daily practice of really sitting and saying, where in my dimensions of human flourishing, whether it's spiritual, financial, relational, how I'm exercising my potential, what feels off? And typically, where you feel off, you mentioned it's in your gut. It's the anxiety you feel before on Sunday nights before Monday morning or before you're boarding your plane on Sunday to be gone all week. Or, the headaches or the fatigue. It's our body tells on us oftentimes, and we tend, especially as women, to ignore it versus saying, I always feel this sense of dread before Monday mornings. What is that, right? Because on paper I look successful, but maybe there's something deeper. And to your point, getting to know yourself, spending time with yourself. I think that that's so important. This leads me to the power of no and KNOW that you talk about. Walk us
Mhm.
through your framework.
Yeah. So throughout my life, I was always good at showing up for everybody else and everything else. I am that nurturing type, which we as women often fall into that category. And I got to a stage, and this is probably when I turned 50, and I began to reevaluate my life. And I realized I was saying yes to a lot of other people and things, and I was not saying yes to myself. And I wanted to give myself permission to say yes to myself. And so, with that, when you're saying yes to yourself, there's going to be some things that you have to say no to, no,
Right.
because you have to have the power of no, KNOW. So, what you have to truly do is you have to make sure that you are kind to yourself. A lot of times we are so hard on ourselves. We're human. We've made some mistakes. We're going to make some more, and our mistakes does not define who we are, and our next chapter can be greater. That is just the basis of something that we went through, just those experiences that we learned from. So we have to give ourselves grace. And I
Mhm.
think once you are kind to yourself, then you have to make sure that you're nurturing to yourself, that you have to spend some time for yourself, do some self care, self love, types of activities. Like I like your 7-minute exercise that you do. Things like that because we can get so busy moving as soon as we wake up in the morning. For me, I wake up every morning and I do prayer and meditation because I want to get myself in the right frame of mind so that I'm prepared for the day. The next thing is, I believe it's a mindset. You have to be very optimistic. So if you don't think you can't do it, you can't. But if
Right.
you think you can, you can. And so it's not saying that you won't have some obstacles along the way, but you have to know that those obstacles are often building and preparing you. So just be optimistic and know that you deserve the very best. And that's where the last part comes in is worthy to self. So that's the power of no, KNOW. It's about being kind, nurturing, optimistic, and worthy to self.
Say no, say more about worthy to self. That one really strikes me because, again, I've spent the last several years studying women in particular, and I think it's hard for us sometimes to be kind to ourselves. We're so much more kind to our friends than we are to
Yes.
ourselves. It's like, would you treat a dear friend or loved one like that? Would you say the things you say to yourself to somebody you care about? The nurturing, put your mask on first. Know that you can't pour from an empty cup. I love the what you put into the universe it comes back, right? So if you don't think you can, you can't. But
Right.
if you're putting out there optimism, say more about this worthy to self, because I think that's one where women probably really struggle.
Yes, I think we have to know that we deserve the very best. And I am a planner. And so I believe that you have to really have, we know that oftentimes people have these financial plans. They may have career goals, but I believe you should have overall life plans. And so you really need to kind of think about all the things that you want to do. Like some people call it a bucket list or whatever, right? I call it just a life plan. And you have your various categorical buckets, and that you need to make sure that you know you deserve to achieve and to have all those things. And then you make time for yourself. You make time to make sure that you're taking action to move into that direction because you know that you deserve it. So it's something about when you know that you deserve it, that you're entitled to this, that it will give you a different mindset overall.
Oh my gosh. I could not love that more. And obviously your planner, you were planning back when you were, a young adult going off to college and we were already making your plans. So um for the person who isn't as naturally, and I am a planner too, but for the person listening that maybe needs a little more guidance, you talk about in one of your books, 30 days to yes to me. Talk about the magic of 30 days and what's sort of the essence there around really creating that plan.
Yeah, I think that whatever you want to pivot or whatever you want to accomplish, it has to come with some form of discipline. And I used to hear people say that, it takes about 90 days to make a change.
Mhm.
And I believe you have to start somewhere. And so I wanted to say if you could at least time bound 30 days to get you started, you will have made some tremendous progress. So, hey, if focusing on something a quarter seems too much, let's kind of focus in a smaller time box and let's say, hey, I can give myself 30 days to start this pivot, to start to say it's okay to say yes to myself and to focus on myself. So that's where I came up with 30 days to yes to me, which is a very digestible, simple book. It used to be very thick, but before I released the book, I had a lot of people read it. And we began to say, in this world, people don't like a lot. They like quick. They like that instantaneous. And so we then nailed it and scaled it down to a real practical guide that gives you 30 days of things that you can consider that you might not have ever evaluated, but it will give you some time to remove that clutter in your life, clutter in your mind, just clutter in your overall space so that you can begin to prioritize yourself, because when you get yourself right and you really feel fulfilled, you can be so much more impactful for your family, for your community, for your friends.
Absolutely. And yeah, it's interesting. There's so much synergy, which is why I think that you and I connected so beautifully. Because I talk about the discipline of direction, right? You have to pick and choose the direction you're going rather than allowing drift to just allow you to sort of go where the environment is taking you, making a choice about clear direction of where you're going. Um, and I love 30 days. And all of the notes, by the way, will be, we'll have everything in the show notes about all the places they can reach and find your amazing, amazing books and guide them through the process. You mentioned pivot and taking control and having direction and having a plan. For the person listening that wonders if it's too late or it's too disruptive, right? I was my position was eliminated when I was 55 years old, actually turning 56. And that was a lot to have to pivot at that point in life. There's probably a person listening who really needs to take more control, put themselves first, find their worth, create the plan. How do you how do you address the person that thinks it's too disruptive, it's too late, etc.?
It is never too late. And I wanna say that I just turned 55 this past Monday, so pretty exciting,
Yeah.
and I will say that, a lot of times when you're in your 20s or 30s, you feel like you got a lot of time, and then once we get in our 50s, we're like, "Oh my god, like, I don't have a lot of time left." And I would say that you have to make sure that you know that if you want something, even if you feel like, hey, I'm in my 40s, my 50s, my 60s, and you know there's something that you've always wanted in life and you haven't achieved it, that why not make sure before you leave this earth that you have achieved it, you have gotten what you wanted. And so I would say that it is never too late to pivot. And, like, as I'm now in this new world that I began to be obedient to do things, it at times, it is scary, right?
Mhm.
And that you have to then just keep grounding yourself and knowing that I feel like if I take a step and I do some research and I connect to some people that I will find my way along the way. A lot of times we feel like we have to have it all figured out. We just have to begin. And
Right.
even though it may be scary, begin even if it's scary. That I would say that as long as you know who you are being who you are, and you surround yourself because no one gets anywhere alone. So go get those coaches, go get those mentors, find people that can aid you and support you and encourage you along the way. That would be my best advice to someone who feels like it's too late or they are like fearful of making any types of pivot. Because sometimes, we're forced to pivot. Other times we want to make the pivot. But even in my case, where I was not forced to pivot, it was still scary, like, in all
Sure.
honesty, because I have never done this. It's uncharted waters for me, right? And so but I do know what works every time is when you know yourself, you be yourself, and that you surround yourself, things will work out, and you have to believe that every time.
Know yourself, be yourself, and surround yourself. I think that is so profound. And you and I are both a women of faith. We're both Christians and put a lot of our um, recognition, understanding of our purpose into something bigger than ourselves. Regardless of somebody's faith tradition, that sense of purpose, that every human being is called to be something more, right? That there's something that you're called to do, um, and so if you're feeling that disconnect, it's likely you're just not fully living into that sense of purpose. Would you agree?
I totally agree with that. I totally agree. And my only regret is that I did not figure that out sooner. You know, like I was just so busy chasing the dollar, chasing the
Yeah.
position, chasing the title that I didn't figure that out. And I was self reflecting just last Monday because Monday was my birthday. And I self reflect often, but as I have birthdays, I spend that day really reflecting now and I began to say, gosh, if I just had known some of this stuff that I know now, and then I had to like giggle to say, at least I know it now,
Right.
because think about sometimes you never get the knowledge that you need. But yeah, I can definitely relate to that.
Yeah. But you know what, Anouk? I want to challenge that just a little bit on your behalf um, because I am confident that there are so many people that you touched and so many people's lives that you impacted in your leadership along the way that are better for you having been in their life, are better for you having been their leader, that they saw in themselves their potential, their ability to be maybe more than they even realized. And I think God puts us in those situations as well. There's a readiness for moving into another phase or another chapter of who you came to be and who you're meant to be in terms of your purpose. I think it maybe just looked different for those first 30 years.
I agree with that. I totally agree because I believe that early on when I was a leader in corporate, I don't feel like I was that compassionate leader.
Mm.
And because I've had role models that were showing me something different. And
Right.
so then
Right.
I became in tune with myself to say that I know who I am and I have a purpose to fulfill, and this is my assignment. And so I can fill my assignment in this situation. And so that's when I began to go out my way to truly serve people and be that servant leader and to kind of help people, help develop people, help to inspire and encourage. So I did use that platform, if I use that as a terminology for
Yeah.
corporate, to still minister and do the things that was aligned to my purpose. You're totally right. But it took me a little while to understand that and
Right.
to really utilize it. And when I began to utilize it, I then did get some fulfillment or more fulfillment. And then when God still spoke to me to say it was time for me to exit, I did challenge God because I'm
Yeah.
like, what are you talking about? Like, I love my compensation. I love the people that I work with. I am having a good experience, and I feel like there's more that I can do. But he told me there is more that you're supposed to do, just not in this setting. I want you to make a different impact where you can definitely help more people. And I am really grateful that I was obedient. But you're right. I did use my purpose and my passions to help so many people while I was in corporate, and I'm still in contact with a lot of those people today because
Yeah.
I think it's so important that we're building and helping each other along the way.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. So funny aside, so my exit from corporate was not my choice. In hindsight, there were many signals along the way that there was a bigger, deeper calling that so my sister says, when I lost my job, she says, that was just God saying, hold my beer. I've got this. Right.
Yes,
Like
yes,
she's not going to do this on her own. So we're going to
yes,
make this happen for her.
yes, because you have
Before,
you had a bigger calling to do.
yeah,
We have to realize that those jobs is not our source, that
that's right.
God is our source, and that sometimes when we need to make decisions that we're not making on our own, He will force us into
That's
that
right.
situation. So I love what your sister said, "Hold my beer, I have this."
Yeah. Yeah. I've got this. I'm taking care
Yes,
of this. She's not
yes,
paying attention.
yes.
And then I want to speak directly to the woman listening for just a moment. What Anouk just named, that everything we've been talking about is potential drift in its truest form. Potential drift doesn't look like failure, it looks like success. On repeat, a cycle so well practiced, it starts to feel like identity instead of just a habit. The discipline of direction asks the same question Anouk has been answering her whole career. Not are you succeeding, but did you choose this or did you just choose to keep doing it? Breaking a cycle and stopping drift are the same act. The moment you name it, name the pattern out loud, you've already started to choose a new way forward out of it. Anouk, it has been an incredible gift to have you on the show. And I always ask one last question, but before we go there, talk about, and we'll have it in the show notes, where folks can reach you. I'm sure that there's people listening thinking, not only do I want to pick up copies of your books, but also your coaching and other things that you have to offer.
Yes, everything's on my website. My website is Anouk-MC.com. So Anouk is Anouk -MC.com. And you can get all of my information, my contact information, my social media information, all of my books, and booking me for coaching sessions and things like that as well.
Yeah, you guys definitely write that down if you're on a walk or you're driving and you're not where you have the opportunity to take notes. You can find this podcast episode on all the places that you love to have your podcasts, and all of Anouk's information will be in the show notes. Before we wrap up, the last question I like to ask all of our guests is the one small thing you would invite the woman listening to do today.
Just say yes to yourself and go do it. Go do it. Say yes to yourself. You deserve it.
Oh, I mean, that is like mic drop moment. This has been so special. I'm so blessed to have met you. Our very first phone call, we just were kindred spirits. My birthday's actually this month. You're June 29th, is that right?
June 29th, yes.
And I'm July 29th. Yeah, I remembered that. Well, I hope you had an amazing birthday. I'm so
Good.
delighted that we had this time together. Keep just helping the folks out there. What you offer to people is such a gift, helping them to have the realizations that you had, to find their soul purpose, to live into that. And I just love this know, then be kind, nurturing, optimistic, and worthy to self. I think if you've listened to nothing else, for the person listening, you deserve the very best. And thank you for bringing that to individuals around the world, Anouk. We're grateful for you.
Thank you. I'm really grateful for this opportunity. You are amazing and keep serving and touching all the lives that you're touching. The best is yet to come. Wish you nothing but blessings on blessings on blessings.
Thank you so much. That concludes today's episode of Climbing the Corporate Ladder Without Breaking a Heel. Thank you for spending so much of your precious time with us. Until next time, I've got you and you've got this. Congratulations on choosing to invest in yourself. I know your time is precious. Thank you for spending it here with me. I believe in helping you look up, step forward, and fully realizing your potential. If today's conversation resonated, I'd be so grateful if you'd rate and comment on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen. And if you know someone who would benefit, please share this episode with them. Let's stay connected. Visit me at dr-cynthia.com, and you can find me on all the socials at Dr. Cynthia Bentzen-Mercer. Until next time, remember, boldly start working on your future today.